Welcome to MSP Unplugged, episode number 35. No short contracts. I'm your host, Jeff Halash. This is our live show where we discuss different ways to run your IT business, whether it's managed services, consulting, break fix, or anything in between. Let me introduce the co-hosts. We have Paco Lebron from ProdigyTeks. Paco, how you doing?
Better than good, better than most. How are you?
I am doing excellent. And we also have Liz Pifko from Corvinus Law. Liz, how you doing?
Very good. Thank you.
Good to have you on the show. We're always excited to talk about all things law. Not really, but no. It's a very important topic, and I am excited to hear your take on it, especially with our show title of No Short Contracts, which I know you're a big advocate of. So we'll definitely get into that and talk about that. But before we do that, let's go ahead and share a tip or a story that we could learn from. Paco, I'm going to shoot it over to you.
As I knew you would, Jeff. So, with everything kind of being virtual and all that sort of deal, and me kind of now expanding with my business, I had to take health insurance into effect. Well, I recently joined the ASCII group, and they actually just released a feature for telehealth that is going to be included in the membership for all the members and the users, for not only just the members joining, but their employees as well. So for those that are trying to figure out what you're going to do for health insurance, especially now with open enrollment coming up, something to take, or you just never had health insurance because it was just so expensive for you being a solopreneur or et cetera, you might want to take a look at the ASCII Group's offering. We enrolled in it. We love it. We kind of ran through with Colonial Health, or Colonial Life is the name of the company. And it's been working so far so well. And that telemedicine really works. So.
Very cool. Very important in life. Definitely having that health insurance for sure. All right, so let's talk about, I'm going to talk about a new old task list that I've switched to. As people know, I usually talk about things that I tend to use or try to use. And there's so many things out there that it becomes sometimes a cumbersome way to do things. So I like to go back to old apps that I've used in the past just to kind of check them out and see if it's going to work with my lifestyle, the way I do things. So I started using any.do task list again. I had an account. It was probably over 5 years ago. I signed up for this thing, and obviously I save all my passwords and stuff like that. So I logged back in, and I had stuff that was way old in that task list that never got done. So with that being said, what I did was I decided to categorize my tasks. In other words, you can look at different formats of how to look at tasks. You can look at the format as all the tasks that you have. And then you can break it down into different lists. So it's little bite-sized chunks that you use, and things like home improvement, things you got to work around, do around the house. Maybe things that you need to buy at the grocery store, or things that you need to buy at the hardware store, or, calling the sprinkler person to come out and winterize your sprinklers. Because I don't know where everybody else lives, but here in Michigan, it's starting to get cold. So I have all these different lists that I can look at. And then there was a cool feature that I have not seen, and there's probably in other task lists, but I was never able to get it to work. And that is to do a reminder at a specific time every single day until a task is done. And what I like about this particular feature is that it will remind you at the same time, whatever you set up every single day until you take care of that task and mark it off. So I know I have an open amount of time during a certain part of the day, might be 10 a.m. And so after all my other stuff is done at 10 a.m., I'm going to get an alert for something. Oh yeah, it's a reminder. And if I've got time right then, I can take care of it and get it off my list. Because as we've talked about before, the only way to get things off your list is by having it documented somewhere. Most of my daily tasks or things that I have to do is in my calendar. But there's things that I don't need done like exactly that day, but it's sometime in the future I'm going to need them done. So anyways, you can check that out. It works in the Android App Store. I'm sure the whatever Apple Store is.
The App Store.
People that use Apple stuff, but no. So But there's, I think it's just a great app, and they've innovated over the probably, like I said, over 5 years. They've made a lot of improvements. And so I have to be able to see something and have it in a format that I can understand and that I can parse with my brain. So everybody's going to be a little bit different, but I think you can set this up to however you work with your workflow on a daily basis. So anyways, that's my tip for the week. All right, Liz, do you have anything for us this week as far as a tip or a story that you'd like to share?
Well, since you started talking about task lists and getting things done, it reminded me of something that I did this past month, which was taking the Clifton Strengths test. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with what that is, but it's on the Gallup website, and it's a test that evaluates your strengths, what kinds of things you're good at and what kinds of things you're not naturally so good at. And it divides them into all these categories, one being execution, so people who get things done. There is strategy and a bunch of skills within that category for people who like to plan and strategize and are really strong in that field, which I am. And then there is influencing, which is getting people to do stuff and take action. And then there's relationships. And so all these bigger categories have smaller categories within them. And it just really helps you gain insight into what you're really, really good at and that you need to double down on. And what are some of the things that you might not be so great at? Not necessarily that you suck, but that those are the things that probably really drain your energy, even if you can do them. So you should probably delegate them out. So it gives you kind of a big picture overview of the types of things that you should double down on to really get your business to that next level, and the types of things that you should delegate, which will also help your business get to that next level. And so planning and stuff was one of those things that, I gained insight from that test that I need to kind of focus on more. At the beginning of the day, plan my business day, because I'm in my head and I can get lost in strategizing, and I deal with a lot of risk management and seeing problems that might come up in the future and taking care of them now. And so I get to kind of go off in all kinds of directions. So planning, setting that daily plan, setting the plan for the week, setting the plan for the month, and then checking them off that list is actually, one of those things that will get my firm eventually to that 7-figure mark. And so it just, I don't know, just the things that you said, it brought up Clifton Strengths, and it's really good. It's one of those well-recognized tests that are not complete BS, just play with ideas. Like it's helping me. It's like looking into a mirror and then looking a layer deeper where it's like, oh, I'm actually good at this stuff. Or I thought I was good at this stuff because I get stuff done, but it's draining the life out of me. So maybe, that's something I need to delegate out. So check it out. It's on the Gallup website, GALLUP, and it's called the Clifton Strengths.
Excellent. Wow, that's awesome. That's a great tip. So, Liz, what tires me out?
What?
Work.
I thought you were going to say legal stuff.
No, just work in general. So yeah, I get real tired when I have to do things like work. But luckily, this is not what I would consider work. This is fun because we get to sit here and learn and talk and just hang out and learn some new things. So that's cool. All right, so let's go ahead and let's get a little bit of background on you, Liz. And where did you come from? How did you get here? And why in the world did you go into something like law?
Well, it seemed really cool before I, went to law school, and then eventually ended up at a firm, and then another one, both of which I wasn't too happy with. But I grew up actually in Hungary, spent a lot of time traveling Europe, and, didn't come to the US until I was 18 years old. As soon as I graduated high school, the next month I was out of there. I was on a plane to the US, and I had like a suitcase and $150, and I was like, all right. So it was, I didn't realize how reckless I was at 18 years old, but I applied to college, I got accepted, but like I had no plan for like when I get off the plane, how will I actually get to the school? So that was I'm just, oh, everything's going to work out. And somehow everything did work out. I came here on a scholarship because I didn't have any money. Like typical poor Eastern European has no clue. First time in the US, no money. But I did graduate with almost a 4.0 GPA. Got accepted to law school, which is what I always wanted to do. I don't know why I didn't have any frame of reference. I don't know. I don't know why I wanted to do this, but that's what I wanted. So I got into law school, scholarship there too. In my second year, I got a job offer with a good firm. So I took it, and I was with two different firms for the first 8 years of my career, and then eventually I decided to get out because I didn't like. We were serving large corporate clients, like household names you would know, and it was very bureaucratic, and there were a lot of insurers involved, and I just absolutely hate every insurance company that exists. Like they can all burn to the ground as far as I'm concerned. So I kind of, I always wanted to work with the small businesses, just building things rather than, bickering and arguing and taking people's money and not get anywhere. I really enjoy working with startups and small businesses that are making a difference, that are making an impact, that are changing how business is done, and they kind of help shape society as a whole, So as small businesses together, we have a lot of power and we can actually make a difference. And that's where I wanted to be. And so that's why I founded my firm. And that's why I work with the clientele that I work with today.
Wow, that is an awesome origin story. Thank you for telling us that. That's great. I'm going to tell you though, the 18-year-olds in the U.S., yeah, they're not any more responsible either. So they definitely have their own issues. But no, that's awesome for you to, jump on a plane and come over here and make something of yourself. That's a great story. So very cool. I like it. And yeah, the small businesses, I think when you say that, the small businesses are still the backbone of the U.S. as far as I'm concerned. They still drive the most jobs. They still drive the industry forward. It's not the big corporations. I think people would be surprised at the amount of the amount of corporations that are actually out there. There's not as many as you would think. So there's a lot of small businesses that are actually running, this country and making it good for everybody. So I like that. All right, so let's go ahead and we're going to talk about today the law. We're going to talk about, I'm sure, things with, the title was No Short Contracts. And I kind of look at that and I look at it as no shortcuts. There are no shortcuts to get where you need to be. You need to do things like Liz did, hopped on a plane and just said, hey, we're going to make this work. And she made it work. And so when we look at things like the law and putting something together, this is something that I think that a lot of people shy away from because it's confusing and they don't really know what they need to be looking at, or they don't really know what they need in legalese in order to protect them from any bad things that might happen, whether it be their fault or not. So I'm sure we're going to talk about some of those things today, but Liz, kind of give us an overview of your company and basically your mantra and what you're all about as far as serving the MSPs, IT business owners and stuff like that out there.
So I don't know if I really have a mantra as such, but I'm all about covering your legal basis in a proactive manner, meaning, before stuff hits the fan. If you wait until there is a dispute and you have no protections that need to be in place at that time prior to the dispute, you're going to pay. You can hire an attorney and you can spend tens of thousands of dollars on legal fees, and all you're going to do is mitigate the damage. But there are very, very few instances in which case it can go away at that point. Now, if you are proactive and you do have your, business structure set up correctly, you have your contracts in place, you have your IP protections, then, you know, you have this foundation, this kind of fortress you've built around yourself to protect yourself from unnecessary liabilities and reduce them if they do occur. Because disputes will happen regardless, but how they will turn out and how much you're going to pay, if anything, depends on what you have in place beforehand. So that's what I always try to get across, especially to startups, more established businesses too. Sometimes, you know, you don't have to be a startup to make extremely rookie mistakes when it comes to the legal stuff, because it's intimidating. Nobody wants to like sit down and deal with the law. Like, who wants to do that? Nobody. So I tend to get pushed off, you know, until, well, when I need to, I'm good right now. And then, you know, it's too late.
Yeah, I like your idea of being proactive, because that's going to be the best way to do it, is because you're prepared if something does happen, versus you're scrambling if something does happen and you got to figure everything out on the fly. Whereas if you had things in place beforehand, you've established a line of thought, a way of doing things that you can at least kind of go, hey, we're going in this direction. We're gonna fix this way. This is what this is going to cover, and all that kind of stuff. So I am all for proactive, and we're all guilty of it in our businesses in some sense or another. We're not always proactive about the things that we need to be proactive about. And that's just something that I think a lot of people need to take the time and dial things back a little bit when you are growing your business, and look at things like this to get them established. Don't, like Liz said, don't wait until something happens and then you're like, oh, now what? Paco, what, as far as the law is concerned and things you've had to deal with, what are some of the things that you look for when it comes to protecting yourself and your business?
So it's funny you should say that. So it's kind of the reason why I actually asked Liz to come to the show, because as we're kind of growing, we have used several templates from community sources that have provided it, that have mentioned that they were reviewed for legal cases or through a legal expert. And as we grew, I felt that some of those templates may have been, they're starting to age a little bit. And just because of everything that's happening, constantly changing, I just started puckering up a little more and more as I hear in the last 18 months where MSPs are being breached and, you know, they're not able to catch it. And as much as all of us try to get our solutions together, getting our stack, things of that nature, it's kind of like when they say, you know, those that have been hacked and those that haven't known that they've been hacked yet. It's the same thing as you will have to deal with the law or illegal proceedings in one way, shape, or form, whether it's your fault or not. There will be something that you'll have to address eventually in your career, depending on what you offer. And it could be something as minute as a misunderstanding, or it could be something as huge as there was errors that happened. And I think a lot of business owners just really try and rely on their insurance because they believe they have their insurance. But even then now, the insurance companies, because of all these ransomware attacks, are starting to get a lot more diligent in their contracts and as they're signing up. And if there isn't a real plan being put in place, it's kind of difficult to run with that. So for us, we have been looking into updating our term sheets, updating our master services agreements, where, you know, our good friend John Dubinsky has mentioned that, you know, contracts are kind of here nor there, but they have importance. I think we're in an age where we need to start taking that a lot seriously. And I'd rather be prepared for something to happen than to kind of get caught from behind. So that's kind of what's been rolling through my head the last several couple months. You know, and then I heard Liz on one of the Facebook groups with another IT professional, kind of known in the industry. So I wanted to go ahead and pick her brain, talk to others in the field, and just understand, you know, what needs to be done, and invite her to kind of talk a little bit more about it as well.
Very cool. Yeah, very, very important to you know, look at this stuff. So Liz, from your standpoint, when you look at what are things that people should be doing? Because a lot of people, they get this deer in the headlights, right? And they're stuck and they're not really sure which direction to turn or what to do. So what's a good starting point for somebody to be looking at in order to protect their business?
Well, the number one question I always ask in 99% of cases when someone comes to me with a question is, well, what does your contract say? Oh, my client says I need to do this and this and this, and it's totally not within our framework. What do I do? Well, what does your contract say? What did you promise to the client? Or this client wants their money back because they don't like something that we set up. So what do I do in this situation? Well, what does your contract say in terms of, giving money back? And how that works. Do you have a procedure? Do you have special clauses addressing that, or how is that addressed? Have you properly managed expectations? Have you properly outlined what you do for your clients? Have you properly set up a system for them to ask for projects that might be outside of the general scope of the MSA or your statement of work? Do you use, change orders, purchase orders, whatever, to just kind of do extra things to prevent scope creep without being paid? Sometimes, it ends up in a legal dispute, and maybe the MSP wants to sue and they want to know, how does that happen? Well, what's in your contract? First of all, let's see what state disputes are going to be resolved in, what state's law is going to apply. And that's before we even get to the merits of the dispute. You have all these things in your contract that outline how disputes are going to turn out. And then you have your CYA provisions, liability limitations and indemnities, all these clauses that reduce your liability from a potentially unlimited liability to financially foot the bill for anything that might go wrong with a contract or with a client relationship, which is usually what your opponent wants. They want you to be responsible for everything, and you need to carve out certain things and set some boundaries, with regard to what you will and will not be responsible for. Sometimes the MSP can't do their job because the client doesn't do what they need to do. Provide you with access, provide you with information, not mess with your setup. They bring in some third party, or they try to do something in-house, and all of a sudden you have an extra 50 hours of work and you're bickering about whether they should or shouldn't pay for that, which you could have addressed easily up front by being clear about client responsibilities. That's something that's missing from almost every MSP contract that I see. It's just, your client has more responsibilities than just paying you money, So we look at that when that's the issue. And sometimes you just, you need to rely on a waiver because, you're an MSP that is compliant with industry standards, and you made certain recommendations for the appropriate setup for this client for whatever their business is. And they decided, no, we don't want that. And, now you're in kind of a bind because you want to do your best. You want to protect this client, but they said no. So do you drop the client or, just do less than the best and kind of face potential responsibility? So we use a decline service waiver type form where it's you just tell the client, yes, we recommended this. You said no because XYZ, it's too expensive. You don't want it. You don't like it. And then, if anything happens because we didn't do this like we recommended, then we're not going to be financially responsible for that. And I do it as well as an attorney. So I recommend a course of action. If a client says nope, then okay, I'm fine with that, but you're signing this waiver. So it all turns on contracts and documentation. And I think that's what you guys wanted to get into in the beginning.
I have a quick question, Paco, before you have your question. So if I wanted to write into my contract, and I know you probably couldn't do it this way, but my thought process, I'm a simple guy. If you touch the equipment, I'm going to bring in a ruler and smack your hands. Is there any way to put that in a contract at all?
Well, in most states, you cannot waive personal injury and intentional bodily harm. So
So in other
that
words,
would not be a valid contract. But, if you put a severability clause in your contract, then that clause can get thrown out and the rest of the contract stays. So, and sometimes, it might be a good deterrent. They don't know that it's not valid. So
there you go.
there's that.
Come on, it was a good question.
Not legal advice. Disclaimer, this is not legal advice.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't do that, please. Yes, I'm going to say this right.
That.
Do not do that.
And so going back to what Liz was mentioning too, I think, a lot of us just don't know what we don't know. Like something I was educated on where, I was always told, like, depending on specific terms in your contract, right? And specifically where, a lot of people were putting guaranteed time SLAs where I was always told, hey, don't use guaranteed, use best effort. And then I even found out that best effort has its own cons as well, where best effort means that you have to go as far as going bankrupt to make sure that you do right by the customer, and changing those terms up to something like commercially responsible or other things that are learned. And so that was something that we always heard for over the years in some of these contracts that say best effort. And I didn't realize that till doing my research and talking, and how important that something so simple can really take advantage or not take advantage, but really be detrimental or beneficial depending on which side that is on a contract. So it just shows you that, that deer in the headlights is just something that is ever evolving. And just going into that, just highlighting that piece where, how contracts are, sometimes they are beneficial to the terms that you have in those that have been applied. And you need a representative that actually understands that.
Yeah. One word can make $1 million of difference. There was the one case, I forgot which company it was, but they omitted an Oxford comma, and it cost them like $10 million because it changed the meaning of the sentence. And that kind of leads me into like why, short contracts that are not specifically made for your business and reflect specifically your business model and specifically your unique policies and what you do for your clients and how you do what you do for your clients and what remedies you want in your contract. If you have some, one size fits all, takes you 15 minutes to complete once you've downloaded it, I guarantee you're not getting those protections. And some of those words may be out of place. And it can cost you a lot if you don't go through. That's why, I see these advertisements for contract templates that like, oh, it's only going to take you 10 minutes to fill out. I've been practicing law for 10 years and I can't even get through the first page in 10 minutes, much less a 30-page MSA that, outlines your entire business and how you do things and what the rules are. Like, I mean, it's very irresponsible. I'm not going to bash my competition, but it's just, I don't see how that's even possible. And to date, I have never gotten an adequate rebuttal to that. So I'm just gonna, say that it's very dangerous if you do that because, every clause needs to be on point, especially when it comes to what you do. So scope, payments, how, when, how much, in what manner you're going to get paid, cancellations, returns, refunds, liability limitations, indemnities, all of these need to be on point. So don't go with the 5-minute contract because it's not going to be on point,
And then I think another time, a lot of people will argue, which I'm not one of them, but I know that they say that when you have an agreement that's so long, it can deter the customer from reviewing it or delay things as they're kind of going through for the sales process. Can you elaborate more on like why it's worth it to have that little bit extra time versus being caught into something, or does that kind of just reiterate what you just said?
I mean, has it ever deterred you from downloading an app that there is a 150-page contract that comes with it?
No, because I just
Exactly.
Exactly.
Accept.
yeah.
So it's not that much of an issue. Yes, there are some clients that will say, this is too long. I don't like to read. I'm not signing. Come back with a shorter contract. Well, then you have a decision to make. Do you want to enter into a business relationship with a party that's uncomfortable with contract and that wants you to do work without your terms clearly spelled out? Because in that instance, you don't have anything in writing, you don't have anything to enforce. So if you want to enforce your boundaries, if you want to enforce your scope, if you want to enforce your payment provisions, if you want to rely on the limitations on your liability that you think are reasonable for your business, and you decided to omit that from the contract, then you're putting your business at risk. If you want to enforce all of that, you need to have them in a contract and you need to have them signed. If it's not in the contract, if it doesn't have a signature, then it's not a legally enforceable binding policy. It's just a preference you've stated, and you can trust your client to, respect your preferences, and for it to be like this dream soulmate relationship with your client and nothing's ever going to go wrong. And you can hope and pray for that all day. Or you can say, you know what, no, we do business with our contract. This is perfectly standard in the industry. One thing that can be done in these cases is to just have a short TLDR version, which is like one page, and say, here are the highlights. At least look at these. This is what it says in very broad terms, but the gist of it is in the contract. And that has made clients a lot more comfortable. And then you would list your 5 or 6 primary policies that you want them to pay attention to, and those would be the ones I listed.
That is a great way to do that. That's something I've never heard before, is having that basically a highlight sheet. And really, in our industry, I work in the automotive industry. We have contracts, and when a contract is ready to be signed, the contracts are literally thousands and thousands of pages long in several different books. And they basically, before we go in to vote on a contract, they give us a highlighted version. Here's what it covers. But then if you really want to dig into the weeds and figure out exactly what it says, you got to go to the contract book and open it up and figure out what you're looking at. So that's a great tip. And I think, Paco, to your question, I think that kind of goes against what some people have been saying out there, because there is a way to do it where you can get the information to the client. But I think your other point too, Liz, is that if you look at the industries out there, the MSPs, the IT business owners, when we look at those businesses, I think everybody would love to think that they do business the same way. But I'm going to tell you, I literally know thousands of MSPs, IT business owners, and I'm going to tell you right now, they all pretty much do things different than everybody else. There is very little that is the same, because that's just not how they had started their business, or that's not how they had learned to maybe, use their business over time or grow with it. And so I think that's good to have something that's individualized towards exactly what you do for your client base, because it just makes sense. And then there's no, well, this person does it like this over here, but here's exactly how we do it. When you spell it out, the communication between you and your end customer is there, and there's less discrepancy when something does happen. Because your other point too is that if your best friend is one of your clients and they are backed up against the wall because their business is exploding or imploding, they're going to be able to they're going to try to reach out and have others responsible. That's human nature. That's just the way it is. I don't care how nice people are. At the end of the day, everybody's going to try to protect themselves. So the more you have in place to protect yourself, and it's written out clearly to exactly what you do, it makes sense that that's the way people should be thinking about things moving into the future. Paco, were you going to say something?
Okay. Nope, just agreeing to everything you were just saying. No, but I think another piece to that too is that we're kind of going back to these 15-minute contracts is that your laws are different in every state, let alone in each individual city and whatnot. So you got to know someone that's got to know everything that's going on, or at least on a general aspect of it, of no understanding, okay, this will apply, but there's some other stuff going on there that I've heard, and we're going to have to collaborate with another professional or really trying to get that point as well. Just going back to what you said, Jeff, that, everyone is different, and it could be just business wise, and it could also be location wise as well, where things happening here in Chicago is going to be different than, let's say, happening over in Canton, or happening over in Louisiana, or happening over in Miami, things of that nature. So that's something to also consider when kind of looking at your term sheet, your contracts, anything you're trying to get in front of a client, or just have something that is legally bound.
Yeah, and same thing with, contractors and employees, because non-competes and things like that tend to show up in those contracts. And every state's law is completely, is very specific on non-competes. And there are huge differences between states, as to what geographical scope and what temporal duration is even enforceable when you have something like a non-compete. And then there are state laws with respect to privacy and things like that. If you don't even have to be doing anything in California to be bound by California law.
That's true.
But other states are coming out with similar laws that affect everyone, and then there are some solely state specific issues that you need local counsel for. So yeah, that is a consideration too when you go on LegalZoom and download something that may or may not be compliant with a certain state's law, because I've seen that happen. I don't really name providers, but there was this one. The latest was someone was trying to incorporate a nonprofit, and this was in Florida. And the Florida nonprofit law requires that there be 3 directors on the board of directors for you even to have this valid nonprofit. And of course, they downloaded a contract from some form website, and it had 1 director on it. And, I looked at the contract. I was like, this is not even going to be, if you do this, you're screwed. This is just one thing, but there are hundreds over the years.
Wow.
So one thing you kind of mentioned in this whole electronic world that we're having, a lot of people are trying to digitize their contracts and things of that nature. Have you seen any disadvantages or advantages from having contracts converted from the typical PDF, delivered, signed, and scanned back versus, let's say certain vendors that are emailing e-signatures and are they holding the same type of bounds that you've seen? Are they a little bit more trickier? Or is there really no difference between the two as they're trying to kind of, make everything digital and with the social distancing and such, not to try and be in person?
No, I'm a huge proponent of e-signatures. So, a written contract that you scan, you print, you sign with a piece of paper and a pen, they're easy to forge. And they're easy to say, oh, I didn't get this page of the contract. This happened in litigation. There was a contract case, and we were in motion practice, which is kind of like mini trials leading up to the actual trial. And so what one of the parties was claiming that, yeah, I signed the contract, but that page 7 didn't come with it. Things like that. And that was, of course, the clause that the entire, $500,000 litigation turned on. And they're like, well, yeah, I signed it, but that wasn't there. I didn't get that version. Well, e-signatures are compliant with all laws. There are federal laws like, the E-Sign Act and one UETA. that make sure that e-signatures are just as valid and binding as paper signatures. And because they come with like a signature log that shows, what was transmitted, who signed it, when it was signed, they have the IP addresses, the names of the person, the emails, everything, all this data is there to show that they got this contract and that they signed the contract. And DocuSign, HelloSign, and there are a bunch of other ones that are specifically compliant with federal law. They also have, fields for initials. So if there's a particularly important clause that you want them to specifically initial, you can put that box right next to the clause and you'll have them initial the specific page. So that's even better because now you get the log of that too. And they can't claim that like, oh, I didn't read the arbitration clause, or that, oh, that liability limitation, you just hid that in the small print and that wasn't specifically negotiated. So under state law, that is invalid. No, it was, because your initials are right there next to it. So that kind of takes care of the issue. I love e-signatures. I wish everybody would just use e-signatures and we would never have the issues of, forgeries and I didn't get this and I didn't get that. There's a very reliable log that is produced electronically by a third party who has nothing to do with the transaction. So completely impartial, so much better, can't forge the date because the app does it for you. So I love them. I wish everybody would use them.
That's a good valid point, because I think, for some of us that are old, myself, we look at things and we tend to look at things like, paper is law, paper is the way to go. And I need to have a signed contract. And I used to be this way, but I like you've given the best explanation of why e-signatures are actually better than paper that I've ever heard. So that's great. So now you have just totally changed my mind, and I'm going to share that with everybody I know and go, e-signatures is the way to go. We're going to push this forward and make sure that everybody starts doing it.
And that says a lot if he's saying that you've changed his mind to be able to do that, because this man is very,
yes, I am.
So that's something.
Well, it's funny. Now, I don't know how many of you have, this is a little side tangent, but I don't know how many have bought a printer in the last couple of years. I bought a brand new printer this year, and it's still, because of the features I want on it, the stupid thing still has a fax, which I've never used in my entire life, but it's still there. So I'm thinking, and Liz, you can tell me if this is the case, there are probably still a lot of people that are faxing documents out there today.
There are. I've set a very firm boundary of no faxes years ago.
Ooh, nice.
I don't accept fax. You either learn to use email or we're going to have a problem.
Oh, I like her. Yes, that's what I'm talking about. Yes, people can learn too.
So it's funny.
Exactly. Yeah. Sometimes I have opposing counsel that want to start a fight over me not accepting faxes, but
I love it. That's
Bar
awesome.
Association allows us to limit communications to email, and so that's what I did. I'm not doing fax. It's 2020.
Yes.
Yeah.
There you go.
It's funny. I just had to fax something this morning because I was just like, well, so I used to have an e-fax with my previous VoIP provider, and then I've recently just switched all in on Teams, which doesn't have the fax line. And of course, and so I was going to say to you, Jeff, is like, yeah, you don't have to fax until you need to fax. And it's usually to a state or a city or something of that nature when you need it. But I've had my e-fax line, and even then it was an e-fax line. So it wasn't like I had a true fax on the actual printer. It was literally emailed to this email address for the phone number of the fax number to get it out. But yeah, like I just don't know who faxes anymore still. I'll get into the morning.
All right. So one of the questions that came in the chat room was, obviously you're an online law firm. Would that be a fair assessment? And do you practice pretty much everywhere, or do you only practice in certain places?
It depends on the type of issue. So, there are federal laws and there are state laws, and there are issues that are a mix. And then there are states that allow attorneys to practice there without being licensed there under certain conditions. Some of them need you to associate with local counsel on the case. Some of them are a little more not as lenient. So, it totally depends on what the issues are, what the state is, and if I know local counsel that can help me. With federal things like trademarks, copyrights, anything relating to intellectual property, FTC compliance, a lot of marketing, advertising, all that stuff, GDPR, so your website privacies and all that stuff. That's pretty much all over the place. It's federal law. Any attorney from any state can take on clients in those practice areas anywhere, as long as you're competent. Of course, you shouldn't take on clients that you don't understand the practice area. Other things, like people find me with, employment law matters and client issues where, if you need to litigate, litigation is local. You need an attorney that lives there and can go to court with you. So, it just, sorry, typical attorney answer, it depends.
Yeah, that's a typical answer for a lot of us for a lot of different things, because it always does depend. That's good. So as far as now, obviously you're writing contracts and things and helping people get what they need. So tell us a little bit about your business, what you do, how you help the MSPs out there to get what they need done in their business in order to protect themselves, because I'm sure that a lot of that stuff is across the board.
Yeah, so I run my law firm, obviously, which is just basically legal representation. You come to me, tell me what you need, or you don't know what you need, so we'll get on the call, determine what you need, and we'll get those documents done. And then I also have a website with templates that it takes you through my entire process. So you get a template, but in order to get that template where you want it to be, you have to go through the videos and do the actual work. So, it's not LegalZoom. Don't expect to be downloading something, typing in 5 words, and magically you have a contract. Like, we go through like your entire client work, the client process that you have, specifying it to the degree that it needs to be specified for a third party, such as a judge or jury, to understand what the hell it is that you do. And then we go through pricing and what's your pricing structure. And we go through, all this stuff. And at the end of 2 hours, you might have a contract. Some of you might need a lot more work because you're great at copywriting and you're great at, creating curiosity and selling people on the phone on emotion and results, but you don't have your process written down. So I deal with a lot of MSPs that are like, oh, I don't actually, like, what is it supposed to look like? I'm like, it's supposed to look like a bullet point list of every single thing that you do for your clients. And they don't have that because they're used to, just saying, oh, we'll take care of all your stuff and we'll protect you against outside attacks and we'll do this and this and this, but it's not specific. So, there is work involved, but that's what's going to get a template to actually serve as a reliable contract that protects your company. When it so clearly reflects what it is that you do in your business for your clients, the way you do it. So I have the other business that sells those templates and instructions and just walks you through the process of getting a really good contract in place. And so I am working on something specifically for MSPs. I had talks with someone in that space about launching something together. So I'm not going to say anything too specific about that because I want to just, be really clear on what we're doing or if we're doing anything. I'm definitely doing it. It's just a matter of am I doing it with this person or am I just launching it myself? But I will do this for MSPs where, I'll put together an MSA, which I already have a really good MSA template. A template for your service schedule. So what it is that you're doing for your client as just your basic, monthly, quarterly, whatever ongoing service that you're providing. And then a form for, outside of scope service requests that need to be outlined what it is and how much you're charging for them. And then some, service waivers where they agree not to hold you liable if they decline a service or if they do something that is specifically against the rules, such as messing with your setup and bringing in third parties and trying to do something in-house that they're really not supposed to touch or do anything with. So, some waiver forms to relieve you of liability. So it's going to be a pretty robust package with a lot of instruction to get you to be able to specify everything to the degree that is needed for it to be understandable to your client and to a judge or jury, should it come to that.
You know why MSPs don't have processes, Liz?
You do have a process. Now,
because they're horrible at documentation. That's the problem. So a lot of us, we keep it all up here in our head and we know what we do, but you're exactly right. You have to get something down on paper. We talk about this all the time, and I'm still guilty of, some of it. So there's still processes I don't have down that I should have down on paper in order to show exactly what I do. I'm old school. I think it's done by osmosis. You just kind of.
And you guys are smart. And that's one of the problems with being really smart, is that you think, oh, well, this is just how it's done. Obviously, why would I need to write this down? And it's like, you're looking at someone like me, like, I don't know how this is done.
Right.
I don't know what the steps are. Your client's assuming that things are included in a package that are not included in a package, because if you would include them at the price that you're charging, you'd be operating at a loss, Right. But the client just assumes, well, it's everything computer related,
Yep.
Well, no, it's not. So you need to specify those things. And then, it's not only a matter of contract, but a matter of industry standard. So there are a lot of applicable industry standards that say you have to have written procedures and policies in place to deal with certain things. Now, these are not necessarily going to go into every single contract, like how you will handle a security breach and what your response procedure is and what you'll do to mitigate and what you'll do to report it. But it has to be written down somewhere and it has to be followed. And that's just industry standard, And if you don't follow that, maybe they won't sue you for breach of contract, but they might sue you for negligence. And that's what negligence is. There is an industry standard. You have to act in a certain manner. You have a duty to do or not do certain things, and you breach that duty. You didn't have procedures when you should have had procedures. You didn't follow the procedures when you had procedures, when the standard is you have to follow the procedure. And, documentation. I'm always harping on documentation. It's very important, but especially for MSPs where it's like written industry standards. You have tons of ISOs and NIST and all these standards that require that you have them in writing. It's not a personal choice. You need to have this.
I'm glad you said that. I'm glad you said it wasn't a personal choice, because there are people out there that still feel that, hey, I've been doing this for a long time. Well, and you know what? You can get away with a lot of things for a long time, but hey, it's kind of like you were talking about earlier with the missing page, people talk about. And I've said this for a long time. I told my kids, I said, listen, just because you didn't see the stop sign doesn't mean when you run through the stop sign or you didn't see the red light and when you run through the red light that you're not going to get ticketed. It doesn't matter if you've seen it or not. The law is the law and you can't supersede that.
So you're saying that that's not a suggestion box.
Right. That's good. Okay, we're going to take a quick break. We only got a few minutes left. So Liz, gather up any lasting thoughts you have, anything that maybe you want to cover towards the end of the show, anything that we didn't cover that you want to bring to light, and we'll go into that in a minute. If you would like to support this show, I would encourage you to go over to patreon.com/MSP Unplugged. I want to thank our newest Patreon supporter. We have Andre McDearman, and appreciate that support. And I also want to thank all those that continuously support us to make this show what it is and to, bring information out to help others. That is why we're here. So, sometimes it takes money to do that. And so we're appreciative of, the costs and things that we have to incur. it makes it worth it that you guys are incurring those costs for us. We do appreciate it. All right. So, Liz, any other lasting thoughts on anything that we have not covered or anything that you want to bring to light before we end off here?
Yeah, so we did talk a lot about MSAs and client contracts, but I do want to remind everybody that you need to have contracts in place with every contractor, vendor, service provider that you hire to help your business or that you might outsource certain things to. Because sometimes, if multiple parties have their hands in a project, a lot of those will be your contractors or third-party service providers. You need to be sure that if they do something that gets you sued or that results in some kind of liability for you, there is very clear language in those contracts, first of all, detailing what their responsibilities are. So it's clear that they're responsible for certain things, that they're warranting that they're competent at carrying out those responsibilities. And that if you get in trouble because they did something or didn't do something that was their responsibility to take care of, that they will foot that bill, whatever it might be, including legal costs. So costs, expenses, including court fees, attorney fees, and whatever damages you might be liable for. If they're the cause of that, you need to make sure that you're compensated. And of course, a lot more goes into these third-party contracts, but that's why you need to have these set up in a way that it obligates them to take responsibility for what they say their expertise is. They need to warrant that they're experts at what they say they're experts at, because a lot of people online aren't. And there are a lot of problems that come out of that. And so you want them to guarantee that they know what they're talking about. So you're not left with, footing a $50,000 bill because somebody misrepresented what they're capable of and didn't promise to compensate you should there be a claim arising out of that. And it's true for, everyone from your marketing agency in case they use copyrighted images on your website that they didn't get a license for, and now you're getting the Getty Images extortion letter for $25,000, or they're going to sue you for $50,000 because that picture of a pickle is actually copyrighted. And it's like, everything from that to like outsourcing actual work to a third-party provider, because they're the ones that you send out to provide on-site services, and they screw something up. So it could be anything. So that's why, have these provisions in every contract and have contracts with everyone. Those are the frameworks of your business relationships. So if you do business without a contract, no one can help you. And that's what we started with, anytime there's a problem, the first question anyone will ask you, what's in your contract? And if you don't have one, you probably lose. So
a good defense probably wouldn't be, I don't know them. I've never seen them in my entire life.
I have no idea who this is.
I never sent them out there. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah. If you didn't use a contract, there's no e-signature proving otherwise. So that.
Well, Liz, I appreciate you coming out here today and sharing with us. And I've learned a ton, and it has been a joy to talk with you. If people want to find out where you're at and what you're up to, where would they go to get any information and get in contact with you?
So both of my websites are getting a remake. So you might get a under construction coming soon type screen, but it's my website for the firm is Corvinus Law, Corvinus law.com. And the website for the legal templates and instructions is renegade-legal.com. But you can always email me. It's liz@corvinuslaw.com. And, just email me what the issue is. Tell me you found me through the podcast, and I will respond.
Awesome.
And if I can't help you, I have a large network of attorneys that I refer to for, particularly state law heavy matters. So, sometimes I can find someone to to hook you up with if you don't want to like find an attorney on Google, because you know you never know what you get.
That's safe. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I definitely appreciate it, and appreciate your time coming out with us and just hanging out and talking about all things law.
Well, thanks for having me.
All right, Paco, if everybody wanted to find anything about you, where would they go?
This Fine Programming every Friday at, what are we doing at noon Eastern now? So
Noon Eastern, yeah.
Noon Eastern.
New time.
And then just two things I wanted to add. One, once Liz's websites are up, I definitely encourage you to sign up for her newsletter, because they are very informative and they give a lot of real life examples that make you pucker up to make sure that you know that law is the real deal. And two, TechCon Unplugged 2021. We are actually pretty close to having some dates and the location for all of you. So stay tuned. We will be talking about that. I'm hoping to have that here within the next 2 weeks. So be on the lookout for an announcement on when we're going to have that next year. But it is definitely coming back. It will definitely be in September, but we will go ahead and give you some information as we kind of move forward, but hoping to get that to all of you here shortly.
Awesome. Excited to hear about that. So, oh wait, I'm a part of that. Yeah. So no, yeah, we're going to, no, we did talk about it a little bit in a Facebook Live I did for the Patreon supporters. So, yeah, exciting times. Yep. 2021, man, we're just going to kick the doors in and we're going to rock and roll again. Like we've never rock and rolled before. I don't even know where I came up with that term. Again, I'm old. But we're going to have a good time in getting together. I know people are itching to get together face to face again, because, the online stuff, take it or leave it. Differing opinions on there, but it's just not the same as in person. There's a different dynamic that goes into that, and just being able to hang out with people, get away from your business and learn new things, learn what others are doing so that you can be better for it. All right. You can watch live or hang out in the chat room over on youtube.com/MSP Unplugged. And I would encourage you to do that. It's Friday at noon if you're not doing anything. And most of you hopefully aren't. Hopefully you're wrapping up your week by then. Go ahead and check us out. I know there's a lot of other programming and things that are going on, but we're always there on demand also. So you can get it anytime you want. And obviously, a lot of people still listen via audio, which is the number one way that the podcast goes out. And I think is going to be the number one way that people look at these things, because we're not doing any type of gaming videos or anything like that, which, a lot more people would be interested in. A very niche audience, which is good, because we're a little more personable that way. But yeah, come on out, check it out, hang out in the chat room, ask questions. Sometimes we get to them, sometimes we don't. But we always keep it on our radar, and having wonderful guests like we do with Liz coming out and sharing things that is going to help you in your business. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel and your favorite podcasting app to never miss an episode. Subscribe to both for the heck of it. Just hit that subscription button or whatever these youngins tell you to do nowadays. And, we'll be there in your feed or in your email or wherever they go nowadays. Anyways, I want to thank everyone for listening, and we will see you next time on MSP Unplugged.